Due to the following CBS School Break special, Magnum PI will not be seen today. It will be broadcast tomorrow in the regular time period.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Coming to Kickstarter from the mind of Franco, the man behind Teen Titans Go to the Library, Faye of the Moon, and All Yeah Comics, comes the new LXT, the adversarial fighting card game, live now on Kickstarter. LXT, Lux vs. Tenebris. Imagine a loved one has been spirited away to a land of terror and torture. Would you be willing to go after them and fight through a horde of acolytes of the Dark One just to get them back? Developed as a role-playing card game that can be played multiple ways. The cards will have full-color illustrations on the front and chock full of stamps and moves on the back. You can also get the LXT Who's Who book with origin stories and information about all the characters. Still want more? Also available is the LXT Dark Atlas book, filled with prose stories about all the baddies and illustrations from a wide selection of comic artists. There are plenty of add-ons you can purchase separately, like comic books, stickers, original art from the game, and more. It's going to be a howling good time. LXT, live, now on Kickstarter. Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I'm happy to welcome Mark Lamming back to Word Balloon. I've been following Mark on social media for a really long time, and if you have as well, you've seen glimpses of his latest project, and I'm going to bring up the cover here in a second, from Humanoids. Him and Chris Sebela doing Eden, a fantastic sci-fi epic. I'm going to let Mark describe it, but Mark, first of all, great to see you.
Really good to see you, John.
And tell us about Eden. I again, I was telling you off the air, it's a fantastic graphic novel.
Well,
and well, you know, you come with your A-list art as always, and Christopher Sebela did a hell of a job on the script. Is this based on an existing novel?
It was a film script that Humanoids had bought. That I mean, I don't want to say failed film script because I don't know. I think it was going to go into production, didn't go into production. But we were given their outline and told we could, you know, as long as we kept almost to what was there, you know, just use this as a jumping off point. So Chris's story is very different to the pitch I read. But it, you know, the only thing that's similar is they get on a spaceship and go close to the moon.
That's great.
Other than that, the family are very different in the film script. Oh, and the whole idea of there being a lift to take you up to space. You know,
yes, space elevator.
This elevator was in there.
Got it.
Besides that, it's pretty much Chris's story.
Okay. And you correct me if I'm wrong. This is a family, basically. Your classic sci-fi tale, the Earth is running out of resources. Yep. They find a new planet that they call Eden that, you know, the elites seem to be going to. And there's a whole corporate structure that is facilitating the trip. And this family of three kind of con their way into replacing another family. And they're a family of lesser means. So
I think the idea is that almost everybody is of lesser means. You know, when you meet the family at the beginning of the book, they're in the middle of ransacking somebody's home just to get by, and then you've got the other gangs that are patrolling the streets of Paris doing similar things. So what drew me to the book was the fact that the family weren't heroic in any shape or form. This is very much people living their life on their own terms, rather than having a big moral code or anything like that.
Absolutely.
So not really anti-heroes, just people dealing with the crap they've got to deal with.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of a near apocalypse sort of situation on Earth, and everybody's just trying to survive. So we're almost at the Mad Max period. We're not.
There's loads of world building in there in terms of what we don't tell you. So you've got all, the art should be telling you half the story, rather than Chris having to do, the cats and the dogs have died, and there's been a terrible disease, and and here's the road warrior. It's not quite that, but it's kind of asking you to it does the thing that I always loved about Chaikin stuff, where basically it starts with meanwhile, so you're dropped into the middle of the story, and you just have to deal with the story as it starts from there.
Well, and that's fine. I mean, again, it's more than enough information to get you going. And truly, man, you drew the hell out of it. I'm always a sucker for great spaceships. We've been very fortunate to get your kind of space opera art on things like Star Wars. But this is a very different story, and more grounded and really more relatable. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, essentially.
I was very determined that it would feel like the future of tomorrow, not the future of sort of hundreds of years' time. So all of the cars in the book, buildings, technology is all based on stuff where I went and did loads of research on prototyping and, looking at what they were looking at for planes next, and where they thought we could go with space travel and that sort of thing. So it's without turning into having to join NASA, it's as grounded as I could make it, and still be drawing a comic book.
Geez, it's in some ways it's almost a modernization of that George Pal movie from the 50s, When Worlds Collide.
Yeah,
and it's got that feel to it as well. Yeah, man. No, I honestly think it's a great story. I think Chris wrote the hell out of it, and
I've been a huge fan of Chris's work since I first read his book High Crimes, which is, I'm sure you've read it. It's just fantastic, isn't it?
Indeed, and that's when I discovered Chris as a reader, and Ibrahim Mustafa as an artist. Yeah. Absolutely, man.
It was one of those things where it's like he went on my list of people I wanted to work with as soon as I'd read that. So the two of us have been sort of circling each other for about 10 years, hoping, we hadn't said that we wanted to work together other than in social media. But, it's one of those things where you just kind of drop it out there. So it was, when I found out who the writer was, it was like, this is even better. I'm going to work for Humanoids, who I've always wanted to work for, because, that's, those French Belgium comic books are my jam. That's the stuff that I've always loved. And then to work with somebody who I knew was as good as Chris, was a real major bonus. Plus the script was just dynamite as well.
I hear you on all counts, man. Absolutely. And I think as we get older, we appreciate and really, again, here I am in the States, you're in the UK. But I mean, we love superhero stories, and that's great. But and still do, frankly. But there is something about the bidet, if I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
The Franco-Belgian.
Yeah, the Dessinée, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you want something every now and then. You want something more significant, and this is the beauty of comics, man.
Well, it's really they do superhero comics. They just don't have superheroes in them. So you got pirate comics, or you got cowboy comics, or comics about spies. So it's still adventure comics. And there's lots of sci-fi and superheroes at their heart, as Grant Morrison will tell you, are just sci-fi stories.
That's fair.
Superman, biggest sci-fi story going.
Well, that's certainly true. Absolutely true. Yeah, and and again, that's what I've always appreciated about European comics in general. That although you have your costumed characters here and there in the UK and in the Franco-Belgian comics, but it's not necessary, and you can just get a good adventure story in particular. You know, it's funny you mentioned westerns, and I was wondering, have you done westerns? And if not, would you want to do westerns?
Doing both when I did the Boba Fett comic, that was me and Greg Pak basically doing
Sure.
doing a western. It was just in space.
Yeah, bounty hunter. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to do a western at some point. Yeah, I was brought up on them as kids. You know, The Virginian was my favorite show for a long time as a kid. You know, High Chaparral, Bonanza. You know, Have Gun Will Travel. You know, all that stuff. You know.
I get it, man. No, you know,
Chuck Connors in it, I wasn't interested.
Say it again.
If we didn't have Chuck Connors in it, I wasn't interested. You know.
Well, honestly, man, and I know I always bug you about. I'm always curious what you grew up with, and I always tell you the British shows that I love, and I love hearing about both the British and American shows that you love. So that's fantastic. No, those are some of the best westerns out there and everything.
Yeah,
and
I mean, Alias Smith and Jones, that was another favorite of mine.
Love that show. Absolutely love that show. Poor Peter Duell.
Yeah,
what a tragedy. My God. And then it always confused me because I saw the John Wayne movie, Chisholm, and his brother is in it playing Billy the Kid in Chisholm.
Right. It's a long time since I've seen Chisholm, but I remember seeing that and loving it as a kid.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I don't know, again, because we have our childhood memories of movies like that. I think that literally was the first John, and maybe the only John Wayne movie I ever saw in the theater. Right. And it was because, you know, somebody's dad brought a bunch of us kids to see it and stuff. And we loved it. I mean, oh my God, what a movie. Forrest Tucker, everybody in that movie is fantastic. But yeah, it was like, wait a minute, I thought that guy died. What the hell's going on? And then I found out it was his brother. It was Peter Duell's brother.
Right, excellent.
Yeah, great. Again, Smith and Jones. Everybody, if you've never seen it, every now and then I think we get one of the Western channels running it, but also there are tons of episodes on YouTube. Thank God for YouTube, man. I told you that's how I finally saw Adam Adamant.
Yeah, great. But you know, I was second generation to that because it stopped running by the time I was a kid. But
sure,
it was one of those things like the Champions or. You know, the Steve and Mrs. Peel Avengers, you know, that was on telly, but you know, as reruns.
I'm hip. No, and I love all that stuff that Lord Grade gave us through ITV and everything. I mean, yeah, I was Champions and the Persuaders and all those. I forget the one that Persuaders was Tony Curtis and Roger Moore.
Yeah.
What was the one with Robert Vaughn?
Oh, God, you see, I was just trying to think of that. It had, the Avenues and Alleyways was the theme tune. Oh God, I'm going to lose my nerd card for this one.
Protectors, maybe Protectors.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, there you go. Yeah, and the Baron with Steve Forrest.
Yep.
And Man in a Suitcase. I'm a sucker for all that stuff, Mark. I truly am.
Absolutely.
Well, they were fun. They were really fun.
I mean, you see that. I think the 60s and 70s, they really did adventure shows well. You know, you know, for kids, you had all the Jerry Anderson Thunderbird stuff and Captain Scarlet, yeah, which is an hour of kids just going, my God, this is cool.
I've shown my young nephews when they were little kids. They're in their late 20s and early 30s now, but I got the DVDs of Thunderbirds and I showed them to them. And I'm like, I wonder if they're going to enjoy it. And of course they did, because they're like, oh my God, these are like toys come to life.
Yeah.
Not only the puppets, but also the fantastic models of the space stations and all the vehicles. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, the older I get, the more I like the clunkier stuff. So, you know, I really love Fireball XL5 because it's so terrible. And the same with Supercar, you know. As the crustier the puppets get, the more I enjoy it now.
I really enjoyed the robot in Fireball X5.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a fantastic puppet. But no, you're absolutely right. And also just the voices, the faces on the puppets, the way they looked. No, I have tremendous respect for Jerry and Sylvia Anderson. I really think they were incredible television producers, and we were lucky to have them. I love when on Turner Classic Movies, every now and then they'll show the Thunderbird movies.
Oh, Thunderbird 6 is still one of my favorite Thunderbird things, just for the bit where Brains goes mad at Mr. Tracy when he's designing the new prototypes and he keeps on having them turned down. Whenever I have a bad day at work, I'll go and find that, watch Brains have the fit for me, and then I can go back and feel like I've just got it over with. Because for anybody who hasn't seen it, Brains is developing new Thunderbirds. Mr. Tracy doesn't approve any of them. So he's got all of his prototypes in front of him on the desk. He's like, yes, Mr. Tracy. No, Mr. Tracy. Then smashes all the models up.
Yeah, those are great. Yeah, Brains essentially was the Q of Thunderbirds. Everybody, if you're not hip to them, I've never brought myself to watch the Frakes live action Thunderbirds movie.
Oh, it's a kids movie. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not made for me. I'm too old for it.
Oh, amen. Yeah, no, I hear you, man. And also, God, what I'd never seen was UFO, and I finally started watching it.
Oh, that's great.
God. Oh, it's amazing, and it's
never had more cigars been smoked on screen than in that show.
And certainly, man, I respect Space 1999, but I kind of wish they would have stuck with UFO and kept UFO going.
They were hoping to, and it was Lord Graves said, no, the Americans need something new. In the same way that Space 1999, UFO wasn't going to happen because he was hoping to do more Joe 90, in the same way that he was hoping to do more Thunderbirds and ended up doing Captain Scarlet, just because Graves was like, well, no, I think we need something new.
No, I love all the puppet shows, Joe 90 you mentioned, and Captain Scarlet. Another clunky but later one, the Secret Service, certainly as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, that was never shown on many UK independent TV channels. So that's one of those things that I can remember having the candy cards for it, like bubblegum cards, but smaller, that I'd got because it had it had the TV 21 or Century 21 logo on the box. So that was going to drag me there. But we'd never seen it on TV. I don't think I saw it until it came out on video in the late 80s.
Wow. Okay. With those cards, were they photo cards or were they like illustrations like
photo cards and paintings? So you'd have people like oh God, again, my brain's gone dead. The guy who did the paintings at the end of Captain Scarlet who also worked on TV 21 and all of the Anderson comics, would do illustrations for those.
Had you ever done any licensed stuff for Anderson properties?
No, I'd love to, but mind you, God, the bar is so high. Just because, do you know the British artist Frank Bellamy?
No, but I'm likely to have seen his work, depending on what
he took over from Frank Hampson on Dan Dare, and sort of updated and kind of took that Dan Dare from the 50s into the 60s. And then when his time at Eagle, and he was doing the Thunderbird strip in TV 21's comic. And that was just... Sorry, John?
No, you finish your thought. Excuse me.
And his work is just bloody incredible. It still looks amazing today. Alan Davis is one of his biggest fans and has a huge collection of his artwork.
Wow. That's cool. I was going to ask, what did you do work for, now I'm blanking, 2000 AD? I mean, how much?
My first comics work straight out of college was for Fleetway, working on a comic called Revolver, which was a sister comic to 2000 AD that was edited by Peter Hogan. So, Peter Hogan's the person to blame for me being in comics. Which I keep on reminding him, it's all his fault. And I did a few romance strips for them it was comics of a grown-ups time, so they were trying to do the equivalent of a romance anthology as part of this Revolver umbrella, and they did a horror one, and they did sort of a Franco-Belgian one as well. But unfortunately, as soon as I got into the industry at that point, straight out of college, brilliant, didn't know what I was doing. My work's terrible, but full of enthusiasm. But the industry in the UK died the minute I got into it. So all of those, 2000 AD went from having Revolver and Crisis to just having 2000 AD again. So, where they'd had this big pool of artists, suddenly the work was sucked away. And I had no idea about how to get work in America at that point, or even whether or not the work I was doing, because it was kind of everything was painted at that point in the early 90s for British comics, whether or not there was even a doorway into that, if you weren't already Duncan Fegredo, Sean Phillips, or Dave McKean. Do you know what I mean? So it was, I went off and had a sulk and became a professional musician for a while.
What instrument did you play? I didn't know that.
Oh, I played bass.
Oh, that's great, man.
In various unsuccessful bands. I ran a recording studio for a while and worked as a graphic designer, and then realized sort of 6 years later that what made me happy was doing comics. Started self-publishing again, and that was my route into comics in the early 2000s with Vertigo.
And what was your Vertigo titles that you worked on?
That was The Dreaming and American Century with Chaikin and Tishman.
Of course, fantastic stuff there. Yeah, was Shelley Bond ever?
Oh yeah, no, Shelley was my boss for 3 years.
Well, that's great, man. There you go. I've heard you glow about Philip Bond, of course, in other interviews and stuff, and rightfully so.
Yeah, he's great. Wide World in Deadline was every bit as good as Love and Rockets to me. Why it's not, he hasn't just self-published and printed that himself, I don't know, because it's a great comic.
How about your early stuff, Mark? Sorry, we're talking about Philip Bond. Do you have you put out recent volumes of your early stuff? Your own stuff?
No, I think the American Century hasn't been reprinted for a good long while. I mean, it was a fairly good seller for a good long while because I was getting royalty checks for it, But no, the Dreaming stuff occasionally pops up because that was something I did with Bill Willingham. So it's, that's nice to have. But after that, what did I do after that? Then it was, I took a break, went and did teaching for a while, and to look after my dad because my dad was sick.
Okay.
And then I got offered work at Boom, and that's my career back, and I haven't stopped working since. So
what'd you do at Boom?
I did Planet of the Apes books with them, with Gabe Hardman.
Of course.
And a book with, first name I'm blanking on, but I did a book called The Rinse, which was written by Mr. Phillips. That I can't remember his first name. It's just gone from my head. But that was a kind of criminal-esque crime book. It would have fit very nicely with sort of Ed and Sean's books.
Understood. That's great, man. Well, I'm always a sucker for a good crime story, and again, I think you've managed to put some crime. Well, you and Chris certainly in elements of Eden. I mean, we see the early activities of the family. There's the family right there, by the way, everybody. And I'm sorry, I only grabbed the cover. You can get a sense, though, looking at the top of some of the scope of some of the space shots. But a lot of Eden's art is interiors.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent a lot of time drawing corridors.
Yes, you did.
I mean, what's even worse is there are floor plans for that damn spaceship.
I was going to ask, absolutely, Mark, and no, that makes sense. I can appreciate that you need to kind of be able to visualize where everything is, even if you are doing a series of corridors in the line.
I mean, I was interviewed for a French website, and they were saying they get from one end of the ship to the other very quickly. Surely this ship is like about half a mile long, and surely it takes them a good long while to do that. And it's like, if I put in every single stage of some, how boring, would that be? It'd be like Lord of the Rings if they showed you all the walking.
Absolutely. Well, this is a colony ship, essentially.
Yeah.
And again, some interesting twists happen that it's not a pleasant trip for everybody.
No, so the reason they sort of conned their way onto this ship is, one, it takes them to Eden, which is this new planet which is being terraformed. But there's millions of people on board the ship. But it's a worldwide lottery that's done once a month to get people off planet, and all these people are then in stasis or in large buckets almost underneath the ship. So so that was other things that all had to be designed, was those stasis units and all the heavy lifters. There was lots of watching Alien and Aliens for stuff like that, because if those films have got anything, they've got good looking cargo bays.
Again, man, no, you drew the hell out of it, and also it's great to see the human story that's unfolding as well.
I really wanted that to be what was brought out most through, because the sci-fi elements are all very well and good, but it's really about the relationship between the parents and the daughter. I mean, she's great because she's a little psychopath. She's it's definitely a kid that hasn't had many boundaries.
Well,
the way then still gets told off for swearing.
Well, the way, again, the conditions on Earth kind of force her to grow up fast, and truly help her mother and father, again, just to survive. And the obstacles that are presented both on Earth and also once they get on the ship, hey, the kid's right there on the front line. And this isn't a precocious Ricky Schroeder in the black hole,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she was really good fun to play with, but I always wanted her to, at the moment when things had got quiet, that she'd be doing things that kids would do, like climb up things or, be looking underneath tarpaulins and things like, this. So there's lots of little moments like that, which again was very much influenced by all the French comics I'd been reading, just because I wanted to have all those little human moments rather than it being just bombastic action.
How much have you had in person FaceTime with Chris, or was this all over Zoom?
No, Chris and I have never talked. It's all been email or messages. That's been it. So Chris was very much kind of, what you're doing, please do it, which was lovely as well. So it didn't seem to be at any point that I mucked it up for him or anything. I think we were both very much on the same page of what we were after as a book.
If people have questions about Mark's Vertigo stuff or Star Wars or the occasional Marvel stories that he's done, I'm happy to talk about that stuff as well. Who was your editor for you?
Well, it started with Rob Levin, who had been my editor on Wonder Woman over at DC. I think he was the assistant editor, but person that I had most contact with when I was working
Sure.
with James Robinson on the Wonder Woman annual that we did. And then it was Jake Thomas. So I've had both DC and Marvel editors working with me over at Humanoids.
Sure.
And a very short period where Heather Antos was in the middle of it as well.
Oh, okay. Man,
So I mean, they were quite. I mean, we went through some changes on the book, but I got good editorial advice and was well cared for.
Is Mark Waid still with Humanoids, or has he moved on?
I think he's moved on.
I'm talking to him Wednesday, so I'll ask him.
Yeah, he was very much there when we started the project, and I know that we presented him the book that I'm working on at the moment as something that was maybe for them. But Mark had got this idea that he wanted very edgy books for Humanoids at that point, and I don't think we had, as part of it's a good fun series that we're doing, but I don't think we had whatever the edge was that he was looking for.
You don't think so with Eden?
Oh no, Eden he was well and truly on
okay,
board. It was the book You Are Here that I'm working on with Nate Cosby right now, that we presented as something to would they be interested, and it went all the way up the chain with a yes, and then it was like, well, I don't think it's edgy enough, and at that point we didn't want to change the story, so it was better to say this isn't the home for it right this minute,
Understood. But now you and Nate are doing it for Humanoids.
Well, no, we're doing it at the moment. We don't have a home for it, so we're just working on it at the moment. We had thought about. We do have a home if we want it in France, but we haven't talked about that deal with the publisher for a couple of years now. So it's one of those things where I know it's on the table still, whether or not it's what works for us at the moment is. But I also presented it to Jake Thomas at Humanoids again, so I'm waiting to find out if he's interested. So things are in flux with it, but it's as I was saying to you earlier, it's Fleabag meets Slow Horses, so it's spies go dating. Yeah, and how tough it is once you hit 30 to have decent dating time.
I respect that. That's fantastic, man. I am a sucker for Slow Horses, I must say.
Those books are amazing. I wish I'd read them before I saw the show, because they're both as good as each other. And my God, isn't that like the best thing that Gary Oldman's ever done?
Well, it's the culmination of all those other intelligence people, whether it's George Smiley or the like, that now, and I don't even remember his name on Slow Horses, but I know I'm challenging both of us on names today. We're both slipping. So.
Yeah, my brain's dead on that one. It will come to me, and as we stop this, and I'll be like, why didn't I know that? But I just love those. That's the casting's brilliant. I mean, it's the acting's incredible. The scripts are incredible, and I don't think I've seen TV that good for a long time.
I'm with you, man. Now, how does that come to you? Because it's streaming on Apple.
Yeah, we get it on Apple.
Okay, you get it on Apple as well. Excellent. I was saying to another friend the other day about when we were talking about streaming in general. It's like Apple is the tortoise to all the other streamers, where they're just like bam, 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 Netflix. You name it, and Sony will just be like, oh yeah, by the way, here's another season of The Morning Show or whatever. Or my favorite, and I imagine it is one of yours as well, For All Mankind.
Oh yeah, I love that.
I see a kinship from Eden to For All Mankind as well.
Yeah, I mean, it helped that I was watching that as I was working on it. So, but I love the whole idea of the parallel history. That would work so well in that.
I completely agree, and it's I really think. Listen, everybody, no disrespect to I know people are just kind of, there's too much Marvel Cinematic Universe product, and yet and it's certainly like they're beating the alternate planet, alternate Earth thing to death. But meanwhile, the alternate history in For All Mankind, I am so with that. And also, I mean, again, man, I'm a little older than you, so I was very cognizant of the Apollo missions. Space Shuttle was all right, but for me, it really was Apollo, and just that's why I've always said that the original series of Star Trek was, at least in theory, plausible to me. That, well, we were sending 3 men missions out to the moon on a reasonably regular basis. I'm like, all right, 300 years from now, I could see a whole ship
Yeah, it's not
and them tooling
unreasonable.
around the galaxy and everything. It's possible, you know. But yeah, oh God, For All Mankind, just and that last season especially. Oh my God, I love it, and I love the politics, the
Yeah, I was
way it's
going to say
originated.
the politics and espionage in it are just superb.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
it's covering communist Russia really well. I don't feel like they're patronizing anybody with it, and
No,
it's certainly not partisan either way, which is interesting.
and
Especially for an American show. It's pretty unjudgmental.
I completely agree. And also, we're getting great, serious performances from actors and actresses that would think of in comedies. Like Daniel Stern is so fantastic as the NASA administrator,
Oh
and it's
yeah,
like, oh man, it's so good to see him. And now he's playing an old dude, and they're like, that's cool. Did you watch The Diplomat on Netflix?
I don't think so.
Kerry Russell and Rufus Sewell.
I love Rufus Sewell, so there's no reason why I shouldn't have watched it.
Oh, you'll love it, Mark, if you haven't
Right,
seen it, because truly, Kerry Russell's the lead, and Rufus kind of it's almost like the CIA couple, and I can't remember their names now. That Dick Cheney outed the woman being a intelligence officer uh, the in Asia, and Rufus Sewell plays like her husband, who are almost like where the Clintons were when Hillary was the Secretary of State and Bill was still around. And
right.
Rufus is like the political maneuver guy in this husband and wife dynamic. And the wife was always a serious intelligence officer at station houses throughout the Middle East. And yeah, and so he's kind of the one greasing the wheels politically while she's just trying to do the job of being the ambassador to the UK, and all this fantastic international shit hits the fan. It's outstanding. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think he's a really underused actor. I mean, it was great to see him in Man in the High Castle. Oh yeah.
yes.
Do you know he was my choice for playing Doctor Strange?
Oh, that's it. I can see that. That's interesting. That's funny. We were talking about the casting for the new Fantastic Four movie. Me and a friend. We're doing it off the record, and I'll say it. I don't mind singing on the record. I like Pedro Pascal a lot as an actor. I'm not getting a Reed Richard vibe from him now. I mean, I'll certainly reserve judgment until I see the film. But that casting really was like, really? Okay,
I,
whatever.
I think he's wonderful, but are we seeing? Is it the Idris Elba thing? If we're seeing too much of you,
Interesting. Sure.
you know.
I haven't reached that level yet. I still love
Right.
anything Idris does. I'm there, so I
Yeah,
get it.
we've had Idris a lot longer because he started off in soap operas in the UK.
Oh wow, which soaps was he on? That's
He was
hilarious.
in a soap called Family Affairs,
Okay.
which was on one of the also ran channels. So that it was so bad it was worthwhile watching. It's one of those.
The biggest misuse of Idris Elba to me was in Star Trek Beyond, because it's like, oh my God, you got this guy who's like, I wouldn't mind looking like Idris Elba, this beautiful man, and you cover him in latex. It's like, no, what are you doing, man? I'm like this, and it was a kid's surprise the way the movie ended.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, I'm like, I don't know. By the way, he so had my vote as a James Bond artist yourself. He had my vote for, if you really want to do something bold with Bond, I'm cool with Idris Elba. I actually think, I understand they're likely thinking of, they want an actor that they can use for around a decade or so, every couple of years, taking a break or whatever. But that said, I really felt, for example, and Timothy Dalton, as he got older, after he played Bond, I'm like, he's looking more and more like James Bond. When he was in that Brendan Fraser Looney Tunes movie, and
Yeah.
it was kind of a parody of James Bond, I'm like, That's James Bond, and man, what a missed opportunity that Timothy Dalton didn't get a chance
my
to.
personal casting for that was Tom Hardy. I wanted him as Bond, just
That's
because he's a thug.
He is a thug. Yes, I agree with that. I don't know.
He also has acting chops, so
very much so.
Did you watch Peaky Blinders?
Yes,
because I mean he's just amazing in that.
He's so chameleon-like. I mean, he really can play a whole range of things. Hell, he was even good in Star Trek Nemesis. I mean, the flaws in that movie were certainly not Tom Hardy's fault.
Yeah,
and I really thought, a guy who really didn't look like Patrick Stewart. They did their best. I'm like, okay, but oh god, yeah, I've liked a lot of his street crime movies. The names are escaping me right now, and some of the miniseries that he's done over the years. I'm a big Tom Hardy fan. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think he's great. I mean, we're not getting him, so I'm not upset. But I just thought he would have been a good choice.
Yeah,
following on from Daniel Craig. Because you'd have that same sort of brutish feel about him.
Once I saw.
Great thing about those new Bonds is Bond has been dangerous for those films.
I completely agree. Once I saw Layer Cake, and that was prior to seeing Casino Royale, I'm like, oh no, Daniel Craig's going to be just fine. This is going to work really well.
Yeah, I mean it's the same thing that Dalton brought to the film. You had that thing of like, oh yeah, he's going to headbutt somebody. It's why that Casino Royale was brilliant when you see Bond's first assignment. Just for how vicious he is.
Agreed.
You understand why he has a license to kill.
Well, and his if not mistrust, just the inability to really connect with women after what happens with Vesper and everything. Oh, yeah. Eva Green was just so amazing. I mean, God, that death scene of her drown, underwater. Oh my God, my heart's breaking just watching it and thinking about it. My God.
I mean, she's fantastic as well. I mean, she carried the whole of Penny Dreadful. She was the best thing about that. I mean, Timothy Dalton was great, but she was the reason we were turning it on.
Patrick Zurcher joining the conversation. Great to see you, Patrick. He just wanted to say he loves Mark's work. I also think he's so convincing with his settings and environments and stories. So he had a question, though he doesn't want to interrupt the flow of our conversation. Is there a kind of story Mark wants to draw based on its setting or environment?
Oh, gosh. I was really keen for a good long while, especially when I was working at Marvel, to do something jungle-based again. I really wanted to do a Savage Land story.
Sure.
So, and Gabe Hartman and I were pushing so hard to do that at one point, but they had no interest in doing anything with the Savage Land or Kaza at that point. So, I like drawing dinosaurs. I like drawing, jungle, but I just like drawing stuff. I mean, I can deal with drawing bicycles now, which well, there was a while where Nate Cosby and I were working up a detective series set in France in the 1920s that was run by women, and the first story was all about bicycle thefts because he knew how much I hated drawing bicycles. And they find out through, the story goes on and on and on. And the big denouement was that there is just this junkyard full of the stolen bicycles. And the idea was that I had to draw hundreds of the damn things. So, it would get me over my fear of bicycles.
So you challenge yourself that way.
Yeah, I love doing that about it. The most annoyingly difficult thing to draw in the world is Darth Vader's helmet. That thing does not make sense. R2-D2's annoying to draw. I love Star Wars, but those things drive me up the pole. But yeah, Patrick, that's the sort of thing. I like that. I like grounded stories. So it's quite useful. I mean, it's that whole sort of one location story is quite good fun to do because you can plan it, and you have a good idea of where you are in space. So like being on board the spaceship, once I'd drawn out the floor plans for the whole thing, I knew what was coming from at various points and where the equivalent of Jeffrey's tubes were, but they weren't tubes; they were just great big things full of wires. But I had to work all of that out and think about how, what would a spaceship look like on the inside. I mean, Interstellar was really useful for that because that was brilliantly designed. The spaceship in that every bit of space was used. So you've got up all those walls. Everything is compartments or covered units. So I've got quite a lot of inspiration from the design on that. But again, it's that whole, if I can, it stops you from going mad if you can get your head around that stuff, because it's another little challenge to the book.
To keep things fresh. I'm sorry, did you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're bang on.
Well, to keep things fresh, I was wondering how much you think about camera angles as far as perspective on each panel and everything too.
Well, I like to keep the camera moving. I mean, that was always sort of. I mean, it isn't Chaikin 101, because Howard has very what I would call quite sort of classical ways of dividing up pages, one dividing up time, and also how he presents his storytelling. You'll often have figure on either side of a panel, something else going on in the middle. Or a very long, thin panel with lots of things going on from left to right. Like I say, this is all the stuff I learned from Howard. So when you see those, I'm channeling him.
That's cool. Did you, during American Century, did he give extensive notes on art when you guys were working?
I was working from his layouts. So, like I say, I learned so much from Howard because, I think whenever you break in at comics, you don't know what you're doing. You can draw, but I don't think you understand comics until about your fifth job. It doesn't matter how, fifth issue. You haven't really got your foot under the table in terms of, because you're just making mistake after mistake and your storytelling is going to be terrible. So it was really useful having Howard kind of going, right, well, this is, and it'd be nothing more than stickmen with the occasional sort of expression drawn over the top of an egg or something for a face. So there was still, although I was getting layouts, I was also getting quite a lot of freedom from that with what I did with it. So that was for the first two storylines, and after the next two I did were my own layouts. So, but you still think, because Howard's scripts are very prescriptive. He's an artist. He knows what he wants on the page, and he's going to tell you. And he also, because that whole sort of time and real estate is very important to Howard about how things graphically work on the page. You can't go mad from that. I mean, another writer I think who works very similarly to that and has a very good grasp of how things work on the page. And every time I've tried to fight his scripts, it doesn't work. So, when I've tried to do something which is, I think I've got a better idea for that. And you look at it and you go, no, do you know what? He was right. And that's James Robinson. I don't know if James ever sketches anything, but he's got such an appreciation for comic art anyway, that I think he really understands, again, like Howard does, the actual real estate of a page.
When you were working on American Century, there also was David Tishman.
Yes.
And what kind of writer is I'm surprised that it seems to me it's been a long time since we've heard from.
Well, I actually got approached by David about working with him again recently. So he's still making comics. I don't know who he's doing it with. or he's certainly still writing. I mean, it was just a shame that he and Howard had a bust up, and
Yeah.
it's how things go, unfortunately.
Oh yeah. Good Lord. Any working relationship, there's that possibility.
I mean, they were doing an awful lot of work together at that point in time, because they were doing American Century. They did the Barnum book
and Bike Club, right? Didn't they do Bike Club together?
Yeah, they did that, and Angel and the Ape they did with Philip Bond. So that they were, obviously just working their asses off at the time. So I can imagine it just, things happen.
Sure, absolutely, man. No, that happens all the time in professional relationships. Patrick says he lit up when you said James Robinson. He was going to say the same thing.
There you go.
And JD wants to know what your thoughts would be about drawing a story set in ancient Rome.
Oh, I'd love it. Being a history buff, all that sort of stuff appeals. Ancient Rome, Greece, the whole sort of, Egypt would be fun. Because you've got all that iconography to play with.
Absolutely.
And for me, it would be that whole thing of being able to do lots of research into costuming, and getting it right. I mean, for the Roman one, because where I live, we have what was the big Roman settlement of St Albans just up the road. We've got, there are legionnaires walking around on a Sunday.
Sure.
Like that.
No, I find that fascinating.
My sound had gone off.
Oh, not at all. You're good.
Yeah, it's back.
Okay, because we could hear you. We could hear you all that time. So
I'm running it through the sound through my my hi-fi in the studio, and it goes to sleep every so often.
I understand. Well, no, I was going to say I love the fact that there are still Roman artifacts around England from when they conquered.
Oh, there's an amazing amount. Every time they knock something down in London, they'll find another mosaic or a bathhouse or a large settlement somewhere that they didn't know about.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. What else, as far as new TV, have you been enjoying, Mark?
Let's see. Old TV. I'm watching Lost again at the moment.
Oh wow!
Okay. Which I'm only up to the second season, but I'm enjoying it. I think there are times when new stuff's all very well and good, but I tend to have TV on in the background while I'm working, and anything that isn't good radio drama loses me. So I really want to watch Shogun, but so much of it's in Japanese that I'll have to be reading the subtitles all the way through. So I've got to put that on watch it when I have the time. I really enjoyed. What was the Apple thing about the US Flyers?
Masters of the Air.
Masters of the Air. I really enjoyed that. Although I felt it was a bit skewed one way, but then we weren't in the war, so it's fine.
Honestly, man, I always kind of blanch because I as I've learned more and more about World War II and international history, it's like, yeah, I mean, I really grew up on a very America First kind of idea of how that war was presented to us in school. And yeah, I mean, it's like, really, it really was an Allied effort. And I appreciate learning more and more about the very important things that the Allies did. Cliff on Comics says, good afternoon, Mark. I love your artwork. Not much of a Star Wars collector, but admire your work. And I will be picking up Eden. So we made a sale. We made a sale, dude.
Thank you very much.
When does Eden come out?
This Tuesday. It hits shops. So it's already out in France in French, and obviously Belgium and the rest of Europe. And it's this Tuesday in the States, Wednesday in the UK, and all other English-speaking nations where comics are bought.
That's beautiful, man. No, honestly, again, I think you and Christopher Sebela did a hell of a job, and I'm very excited about your. I hope it comes out well. Cliff says his LCS received his copies today. Sure.
Oh well, it's early, but well done.
Maybe they're holding it back for Tuesday or New Comics Day on Wednesday. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I know you got a couple other projects that you can't talk about, but I'm glad that you know.
Yeah, well, I decided a long time, well, not a long time, just during COVID, I had a lot of work for hire work lined up. I was going to be doing a Star Wars book with Marvel. I had some stuff at Valiant, and I'd basically planned out the next 2 to 3 years worth of work. And of course, we went pencils down, and all that work went down the crapper. And it was at that point that I thought, I can't ever live in this situation again. So what I decided was, yes, I'll do work for hire work, but it probably covers maybe the odd special, but everything else I want to do creator. I want to have I want it to be creator owned and have some sort of agency in my own work.
Absolutely. No, man. And again, I think your work translates so well in literally every genre you hit. And, again, yeah, you've certainly done a lot of Star Wars stuff. Eden is a different kind of sci-fi adventure, but and the elements that we talked about speak for themselves. And I think you do great faces and great characterization with your art. So no, and why not, man? Again, I think I want to see you build a nice creator-owned library of stuff because you're a great creator. I think
Oh,
you've
thank
got a
you.
great, clean, natural. Absolutely, man. You got a great, clean, natural style that I think is appealing and adaptable to a lot of different genres. So keep it up.
Dave Gibbons is a good friend of mine. He's spent my whole career just telling me that what I want to do is have my own Watchmen under my. It's like that's not going to happen, but it'd be nice to have a raft of work that I own and can take places, rather than it being at the whim of publishers whether or not it comes out again. Because you make this work, you fall in love with it, and we all love these superheroes, we all love these TV shows and stuff, but they don't love us back. And this isn't comics will break your heart, kid. This is just this is the reality of it. So rather than sit around feeling miserable, it was how do I take control of this myself? So I've lined up work with my favorite writers, for about the next 2 years. So I'm happy with the way things are, but it's force of will. You make it happen for yourself.
I hear you, man. I'm facing the same things in broadcasting, and that's why I podcast, is to have a little agency in what I do, and control over it. No, man, I think you're pairing with the right people as far as the writers that you're pairing with and everything, and I'm glad that the publishers are open to what you guys are trying to put out there. What do you have any conventions lined up for this year?
Yep, I'm doing hoping to do New York, but that's always a crap shoot about whether or not you're going to get a table. Even
True.
though I'm with Comic Sketch Art, you still don't know whether or not you're going to secure something because it's so well oversubscribed. I'm doing Thought Bubble. I'm doing London MCM next month. I'm doing London Film and Comic Con the month after, 2 months after that. But this month I'm doing Paris Fan Paris Fan Expo, which is one of the big shows in Paris, which will be my first show abroad, which in terms of Europe. So that'll be fun. I'm sure I'm going to spend too much money on comics when I'm over there, because you're just putting me in directly in the candy store. If you saw the amount of books I've bought that are French now, John, you'd be like, my God, when are you going to put the house?
I get it, man. Absolutely. No, I suffer the same problem. I'm going to be in Dublin in August for Dublin Comic Con. Yeah. I'm bummed, man. It's been a while since we've seen each other face to face.
Yeah, I thought it would have been C2E2 before COVID.
Wow. Jeez.
C2E2 is one I'd love to do again, but I really need there to be some sort of incentive from ReedPop for me to do it, like a table or, paying for me to come over, because New York, I will put the money forward for because I get so much business done there. You know,
Certainly.
I don't ever come back without work or having seen every single editor that I actually wanted to see. Whereas C2E2, you have a fairly good sort of coverage from the companies, but it's not the same.
I understand.
Whereas C2E2 for me, that's like hanging out with people I really like, eating good food, getting to draw for nice people, but it's not a business show.
I get what you're saying, and I'll be doing it in a couple weeks. C2E2, and yeah, I totally understand. And it's funny. I was explaining to friends why I'm going to be out of town for a convention, and it's like because I got to do business, man, and that's a good business convention. So no, I get the difference. Everybody should check out Eden from Humanoids. It's coming out this week, and it's Chris Sebela and Mark Lamming doing an excellent sci-fi epic. It is a very personal story, but it's also very big in scope, and I think you'll appreciate this fantastic graphic novel that Chris and Mark have put together. I'm very impressed with it, and couldn't recommend it high enough.
Oh, thank you, John. Really appreciated.
Oh, my man, it's always a pleasure. You know that, and I thank you for joining us today. Have a great night.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Now you're going to be fast asleep, but later on tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time, I'll be talking to Franco and Mitch and our buddy Wayne about Star Trek and Discovery being back, first 2 episodes, and I'll be shaking my fist and yelling at crowds.
How much are you going to tell them it sucks, John?
I think you can count on that, unfortunately, Mark. You know something? Every season, it starts off interesting, and then it becomes uninteresting and trite. And I'm hoping that perhaps 5th time's the charm in this 5th season, that perhaps they're finally listening to a bunch of us as far as what we're frustrated by, and hopefully we'll get better stuff. But we'll start the conversation tonight at 9 Eastern. And then tomorrow I'm going to be off. Mark Waid, as I said earlier, joining me Wednesday. You real fast, Mark. Any thoughts on the whole who created Wolverine controversy?
Yeah, Roy had nothing to do with it. Editors all the time will suggest a name, or we need a new character that does this. That's not the creation. That was the people what wrote it and what drew it.
I hear you, man. I hear you, and that's.
I think it's very different to Stan, talking about Spider-Man with Ditko. Because obviously Stan's a co-creator, and so is Ditko. It's.
Well, and also, Roy certainly has created a good number of characters at both companies, DC and Marvel, that he can't.
But also, he's well known for not creating characters and using existing properties. Which I don't have a problem with, but Roy's not somebody who's been leaving his he's very good at writing other people's stuff, I think, but he's not somebody who's been originating that many characters.
I hear you, man. Cliff, real quick, says, does Herb Trimpe deserve some credit? I always felt, of course he does. Of course he does.
Yeah, Romita did the original design, didn't he? But, of course, Herb drew the comic.
Right.
It would have still been just lines on a piece of paper if it hadn't got published with Herb's drawings.
Yeah, it's like Ditko always said when he was alive. He's like, creating an idea is great, but you need someone to really execute. And yeah, Senior did design the costume for Wolverine, but yeah, it was Herb that did those first 2 issues in Incredible Hulk. So absolutely, man. Yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting everybody that claims some direct involvement, including Roy. And yeah, I wasn't there, but I certainly agree with the prevailing argument from pros that it's like, as you just said, editors offer suggestions, but really it's the guys who finally do the work.
Ideas are great, but everybody has them. It's the execution at the end of the day that, otherwise just about every comic book would be some editor's creation, because they're the ones initially saying, right, there's not very often that, especially at the major 2, that you get asked to go away and create something. You know, don't often get a Sandman moment. Do you know what I mean? It's where you know, but even that was not, you know, an adaptation of an old property.
Sure.
You know, it was just Neil's very clever.
Absolutely. Or Watchmen, and the fact that Giordano, you know, wanted a Charlton story.
Yeah.
And, you know, then all of a sudden it became a, you know, an original story that obviously you saw the connections to the Charlton characters that Dave and Alan did. But no, it became its own thing and even bigger. I mean, my God, can you imagine if it was only just a Charlton story? You know?
Yeah. I mean, you know, another example, with especially with an Alan Moore property, would be V for Vendetta. Now, Des came up with the name and for the character, but that was then given to Alan and David Lloyd.
Yes.
To develop. You know, he hadn't written. There was no story idea. It was a name. You know, so he hadn't designed the costume because they weren't. He was going to be like a paramilitary character to start with.
Oh wow, I never knew that. Yeah.
So you know, it's like, does Des deserve credit as a co-creator? Well, not really.
No.
You know, he's just good at ideas. You know, which is great. But like I say, ideas are something everybody has. It's like bum holes. You know, we've all got one.
And on that note, well said, Mark. Absolutely, man. A great seeing you. Let's catch up. Let me know when the thing with Nate or whatever else is in the hopper. I'm happy to have you back anytime, and
I'll be in touch and keep you posted.
Thanks, buddy. Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Again, Trek Watch later tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern. Mark Wade will be talking to me on Wednesday at, I believe, 7 p.m. Eastern. All that coming up. So stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.